All right, Mr. Leventhal back here. Now we're going to be talking about Nigeria and Kenya, and we're going to be talking about their governments and their economies. So let's get started with Nigeria. All right, so Nigeria uses a presidential democracy right now, and it has a federal system of power distribution. So why don't you guys write down presidential democracy for Nigeria and federal, okay? So that means they have a president who is in a separate branch of than the legislature. So the president is in an executive branch, and the legislators are in the legislative branch. You have to be over 18 to vote, so pretty normal. And federal, which means that some states, like there's some laws that go for the entire country, but all the different states in Nigeria can also have independent laws that don't apply to everywhere. So just like Georgia can have a certain law that Florida doesn't have, that is also the case in Nigeria. So their government is actually really close and super similar to America's government. You also have to be over 18 to vote. In this image here, you see the Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari, and he's actually got elected really recently. I believe this year or last year. So he's pretty new. And they've had different religious presidents. You know, the last president was Christian or Catholic, and this guy Muhammadu Buhari is Muslim. So they have lots of Christians and Muslims in Nigeria. But yeah, they've had a long history of religious and ethnic conflict, just like I just told you about Muslim and Christian. There's been lots of civil wars between Muslims and non-Muslims. So non-Muslims could be Christians, but they could also be people who practice traditional African religions, animism. And there's been, Nigeria has the most ethnic groups in the whole world. And they have also fought a lot for power. So there's been a lot of fighting and civil wars in Nigeria over the last, 60 years or 50 years. Their government has been really unstable. In fact, from 1966 to 1999, that's 33 years, they were under military rule. Here you see an image from 1983. These military dudes were in charge of the whole country. They were kind of like military dictators. It was kind of like an oligarchy where a small group of people ruled. And these small group of people were all military leaders. So nowadays it's like a democracy, but there's still a lot of political corruption in Nigeria. So I would write that down. I would write down religious and ethnic conflict, unstable government, military rule from 1966 to 1999, and political corruption. Those are all things that I would take notes on for Nigerian government. All right, let's talk about their economy. So they've got a mixed economy, right? Just like South Africa. And they got the third highest GDP in Africa. So pretty good. So this is the third highest GDP, but not third highest GDP per capita, because actually their GDP per capita isn't that great because they have a huge population. They've actually got the largest population in all of Africa. But in this image here, you see all these cars and some of the cities. All right, you see all these cars. You see a city in Nigeria. You see this guy here. See, it says crude oil. So lots of petroleum in Nigeria. So their economy is less diversified than South Africa. That means that they specialize more in one thing, not in lots of things. So their economic specialization is oil production and sales of oil since the 1960s. So why don't you write down specialize in oil. Write this down for economy. Check this out. Around 80% of their government budget comes from oil. So these guys just are all about the oil. All the money Nigeria has, all of it's from oil, petroleum. It brings billions of dollars to the Nigerian economy, but it also creates some problems. Okay, here you see a big oil distribution and center and harvesting center where they process oil. Here you see pipelines. This woman's walking on the pipelines here. And you see here this Nigerian dude hanging out here by maybe the Niger River. And you can probably notice this logo. This is Shell Oil. So this is probably a barrel of oil that is from Shell. Okay. And actually, their agriculture has suffered a lot recently. You know, they've gotten very dry, lack of rain, like drought, and also lots of pollution in their water. So now they have to import food because they can't grow enough food to feed themselves. Their economy got so focused on oil that now they don't even have enough food. And they have to sell oil to buy food from other countries, even though they have lots of land that they can farm. They just have not a lot of clean water. So it's really hard to farm there. Here you see some images of people trying to farm in Nigeria. And like I was telling you before, the Niger River is really dirty. This is the main river in Nigeria. There's been lots of oil spills polluting the river. You can see all this oil here. And it's hurt their agriculture big time. But so even though they have a ton of oil, they have some of the largest oil reserves in all of Africa. There's been so much economic and political instability, and so much debt that they haven't really been able to have lots of money for themselves. Here you see a political cartoon, you know, showing like the military dictator kind of stealing all the money. That's why his belly's so fat. And ever since, so the first they had this, now there's corrupt politicians in charge, and even they have fat bellies because they steal all the money. So they went from a military dictator stealing all the money to corrupt politicians in a democratic society that also steal the money. Here you see some images of the currency of Nigeria. This is the Nigerian flag, and so this is what money looks like in Nigeria. Looks like Naira is their currency, just like we have dollar and peso and euro. In Nigeria, they have the Naira. And here you see some images of some people in Nigeria. All right, guys, let's talk about Kenya now. We're going to talk about Kenya's government and their economy. So Kenya gained independence from Great Britain in 1963. They have a presidential democracy just like Nigeria, but they use a unitary system, which is more like South Africa. So they have a presidential democracy where the president is separate from the legislature, but it's unitary, so that means that the entire country has the same set of laws, pretty much. Different states all have the same law. They don't have different laws. This is the Kenyan flag here as well. And this guy is the current president of Kenya. His name is Uhuru Kenyatta. And he's the head of state and the head of government. And he's actually like the great-grandson or grandson of like Kenya's first president from the 60s. This guy, he's the first president of Kenya. This is Jomo Kenyatta. He is like one of the first he was actually the first president of Kenya. And up until 1991, Kenya, by law, only allowed one political party in the government. So it's not like you have Democrats and Republicans here in the United States and the Green Party. There could only be one political party in charge. And this didn't allow for lots of diversity in government. It was always the same laws, the same thought every year. All right, this is Kenya's legislative, where their legislative branch meets. Their legislation is called the National Assembly. And they only have one house. It's not like the United States that has like two houses. Like, they only have one house. And this is where they meet. It kind of uses the Kenyan colors here. And citizens have to be 18 and older to vote. And they can vote for president, and they can vote for members of the legislature. So here you see some voting booths, kind of. This is what they do, is like they write down on these forms. Here you see actually some like Maasai ethnic group women voting. Here they're voting for president. Here this guy was voting for president, for the senator, different members of the legislature. So that's how they do their voting. All right, let's talk about Kenya's economy now. So they've got a mixed market economy, and it's been improving. It's actually like 24th in the world in growth. So it's getting better, which is nice. They specialize in agriculture and tourism. So those are their two main economic specializations. And their unemployment rate is actually pretty high. It's like 40%. So 40% of people that are eligible to work in Kenya do not have jobs. Here you see this guy, he's proud. He's like, oh, made in Kenya, like these big wooden spoons. So he's proud of that. This has to do with, like, their economy. So talking specifically about their tourism, some of their main touristic, economic specialties includes going on a safari to see animals in the savannah. So people pay money. They go to Kenya. They like go on these safari tours in these jeeps, and then they can go see like animals like lions, cheetahs, elephants, rhinos, zebras in the wild, giraffes. So it's pretty cool. Something else they do is they go on like tours to like meet the Maasai. So here you see some Maasai guys and some tourists who paid money to go on a car, travel to meet the Maasai and like hang out with them and like learn about them. And it's like these guys probably jump up and down and do cool songs and give them food and give them clothes and cool stuff that they can learn about. So that's one way that Kenya makes money. Another way they make money is through their agriculture. So they specialize in coffee and tea, and these are some of their main exports. Here we see some Kenyan coffee growers, and this is Kahawa. This is a Kenyan coffee company. And below here we see some women picking tea leaves, and this is like a Kenyan tea called Katepa Pride. So that's how they make a lot of money in Kenya, is with coffee and tea. So that's it for today. That was the government and economy of Nigeria and Kenya. And in the previous video, we learned about the government and economy of South Africa. Thanks for watching.